Greetings! I am Herbert Erpaderp, and today I'm going to build a bulldozer, which will be quite helpful next time I encounter bulls who need help dozing.
That's not what bulldozers do!
Says you. Anyway, this is a Tamiya 48th scale plastic kit that will build a Komatsu G40 bulldozer, as used by the Japanese Navy. Please insert joke about how this is, in fact, a ship.
You're so funny!
Yep. Inside the box, we find two plastic sprues moulded in grey. As I've come to expect from Tamiya, the plastic here is very well moulded. It's neat and crisp, and I wasn't able to find any moulding defects or other errors. Quite good quality. I particularly like the tracks, which are not quite one piece. There are bits that go on the outside of them, but they're really good, especially considering that they're mostly one single piece. I admittedly don't know much about bulldozers, so I can't tell you exactly how accurate the details here are, or if they're just all wrong, but I think they're pretty good and it looks quite accurate to me. Something you'll probably notice, and appreciate, or I did anyway, is that the hoses for the hydraulics on this model are moulded in plastic. What I like about this is that they'll be easy to work with. Often, when a kit has hoses like these, they'll be made of flexible rubbery stuff which, much like rubber band tracks, I don't like and I find it hard to work with. I really like this though. This is good. All in all, it's good looking plastic, which is of course awesome, but not surprising from Tamiya. We also get this little information sheet which for some reason I can't read a single word on, though maybe it's because I never learned Japanese. The pictures are interesting, but the bulldozer in the pictures looks a bit different to the model, so I'm not sure if this would be useful as reference material. The instructions are decent enough.
Ah, great! He's going to whine about the format of the instructions again!
I was not. Well, I guess I was. You've probably heard it 100 times by now, but I don't like these fold-out instructions. The important thing though is that the instructions work as instructions wonderfully. The diagrams are simple to read and easy to follow, and everything's in a sensible order. Decals are included, and these are, as you can see, some very simple markings. I'm sure they'll work just fine though. The cool thing is this set of little metally stickery things. I especially like the little anchor insignia doodad. That's a very nice inclusion. Okay, let's get to the gluing together of bits of plastic. I start by gluing together the two halves of the central engine-y bit. I don't really know what to call this. Are you surprised? The guide pins here are very helpful in getting this nicely aligned, as you might expect they would do. Then comes the top of the transmission, or at least I guess that's what this is. It goes into place easily, though make sure that you don't put it too far forward. The keying will work if you do that, but it would be wrong and it would look bad and things won't fit later on, so don't do it. This rear part comes next, and this more or less just drops right into place. You would have to work at it to get this wrong. This next part is just about as easy to get into place. It fits nicely into the back of the engine compartment here. And then, so the bulldozer can tow as well as bulldoze, this towing hitch goes into place. The instructions make sure to point out which way this goes up, and that's the way I put it on, I think. There are no internal details in this kit, so we can just go right ahead and put the top of the engine compartment into place. Nice and easy. Next, the front radiatory part goes on. This had a couple of little nubs on the back of it that needed to be removed, which the instructions pointed out. I noticed that the word Komatsu is in raised letters on the top of the radiator here, though you can't see it that well, and I did wonder about that. Is it Komatsu or Komatsu? Am I pronouncing either of those correctly? We may never know. I understand night bulldozing to be quite popular, so to allow that to happen, I attached the headlamps. These go into place pretty easily, they just needed a little bit of nudging to get them into the final position. The box art doesn't show the headlamps, and that's probably because these are optional. Also, the instructions do tell us that these are optional, and they wouldn't lie about something like that. The seat comes next, and I attach the, butt cushion to this part. I'm not totally sure I put this on the right way. There's a lip on one of the long edges of this, though I'm not sure how much that matters. Next, the side parts with the armrests. You can see there's a couple of recesses underneath the butt cushion for these to slot into. Obviously there's two of these, one for either side. A nice thing to have in a seat is a backrest, so I glue that into place next. Once all the bits are together, I nudge it until it looks straight and neat, and then it's done. On the underside, I glue this framey thing. This isn't difficult, but it doesn't lock into place or anything, so you have to eyeball it and get it nice and level relative to the Bulldozer body. It's a little bit fiddly, but not too tricky. Then these final drive housings go into place. These are keyed, and it's pretty easy to get right, though I was initially a little bit confused by them. My brain wanted the U-shaped keying to go in the middle, rather than at the bottom where it connects with the pin things on the framey part. Eventually I got it right, and the parts go on nice and easy. Looks pretty good too. At the front here, I installed a crank start. This has a handy dandy tab, which slots right into the mounting slot. Do be careful with this part, it's quite thin, and I can imagine it would break rather easily, and if that were to happen there would be no bulldozing for anybody. Starting the Bulldozer is well and good, but once it is started we'll need something to control it with, so why not install the controls now? The tiller, I guess you might call these bars, join onto the pedal part here. That can then be glued into the slot in the top of the transmission, which is quite simple. The fit is good, though there is a little bit of play to it, but that's taken care of when we add this little gear stick, I guess. This goes neatly into the little D-shaped hole. Another lever, which probably has a purpose, goes here on the left. There's a little slot between the transmission and frame parts that it goes into. The seat assembly goes into place next. This is pretty easy. It sort of clicks into place with just a little bit of pressure. I did have the urge to install this when I assembled it. I'm glad I didn't though. I think it would be a bit more fiddly to install the controls after the seat, and that's probably why the instructions don't say to do that. This barrel then goes into place right next to the driver's seat. I'm assuming this is for fuel, but I guess it could be for hydraulic fluid as well. Either way, it's easy to install. It's followed by this, I guess, some sort of pumping mechanism? There's a handle on top of this, so maybe it's manually operated? Who knows? What I do know is that the part goes into place quite easily, and is followed by another piece of piping, which needed a bit of nudging, but also goes into place easily. I like this. It looks kind of complex, but really it's just two easily installed parts. Now it's time for tracks. I know I said it before, but I think these are some really good looking tracks. I glue this side thing into place, and it goes on nice and easy. Obviously make sure that you're using the correct parts on the correct side here. We don't want to get things all backwards now, do we? Then, this support thing goes into place. There's a guide slot for this, which makes things nice and easy now and in the future. I set that aside and let it bond while I work on the lifty arm thingy component. We take another side frame thing, which will sit over the inner half of the tracks, and then we glue a support thing to it. Like the other support thing, there's a guide slot for this. Just don't glue it on backwards. I almost did, but only while I was test fitting. Fortunately, I quickly saw the error of my ways. Next, this pistony bit with some hosing goes here, right beside the other pistony bit, which is really part of the same piston, I guess. Again, I really like the way the hoses are done in this kit. At the front, the second part of the arm thing goes into place. The fit is, as you might assume, nice and easy. I add a little bit of extra glue in the middle where the support thingies are, and the result is this mechanism for lifting the dozer blade. Lifting the blade is awfully convenient if you would like to drive the vehicle without constantly dozering everywhere. You can't dozer all the time. Now it's time to install those lifty things. The main contact point is along the bottom here, and there are guide slots that make sure you get the positioning pretty much perfect. To make sure that everything stays together good and strong, I add some glue to a couple of extra contact points. The other lifty arm assembly goes on the other side, which might surprise you, but probably shouldn't. It looks good. The only issue I had was that I had to nudge one of these hoses just a little bit so that it joined the other section of hose properly, so not really an issue. The track assemblies go on next. These mount onto the axle bits, and there are some guide pins on the vertical support things as well. Everything goes together nice and neatly. Obviously there's one of these for both sides as well, and it does go together nicely, though mine didn't seem to want to sit perfectly level, but it was close enough. Moving along, it's time to work on the blade. The main blade part is glued onto the back part, or is the back part glued onto the main blade? You decide. Either way, this is super simple. Then the arm parts, I guess you might call them, go into place. The fit here is pretty good, and they should go on nice and straight with minimal effort. Though you might be able to see when I've got both of them in place that they don't quite line up perfectly. I don't think that's a real problem though, but I would suggest working quick here. I add these parts, which I assume are rollers that contact the support parts and allow the arm to move up and down easily. And then I attach the blade assembly to the rest of the dozer. It pretty much just clips into place. The pins go easily into the mounting holes on the sides, you just have to gently flex the arms apart a bit to get them around the vehicle. Then, the lifty bits, thanks to the little guide tabs on the ends of them, fit right into the top of the blade assembly here. Gluing all of this together should eliminate any issues with how straight the blade arm things are. The finishing touch are these little platey things that go on either side of the arm where it meets the blade. There's guides on the back of these and it's super simple to get them into place. And now, we are ready to bulldoze. Heck yeah. I guess those plates weren't really a finishing touch if you're going to build the driver, and in this case I have, so the driver is the finishing touch. The driver isn't too difficult to put together, though he's not keyed, so you do have to kind of eyeball the fit just a little bit. Like any figure onto which you have to attach the arms at the shoulder, these are a little fiddly and they don't quite fit perfectly, but I've certainly seen much worse. I put the figure in his seat to do this, just to make sure that the arm lines up with the controls. This does make things a little bit more fiddly than if you didn't care if things lined up, but I figure I might as well. It'll be worth the little bit of extra effort that it takes. The same thing happens with the other arm, unsurprisingly, and then we can give him his hat, which I presume also contains the top of his head. It goes into place easily enough, and with a little bit of nudging, fits nicely. And that's our bulldozer driver done. He does sit in place quite well, but it doesn't quite look like he's actually gripping the controls. Also, it looks like his thumbs are a little bit small or partially missing. I'm not sure if that was caused by me, or if the model is just like that. Either way, he's perfectly capable of bulldozing everything now that the 48th scale Komatsu G40 bulldozer in Japanese Navy service is completed. This was a really enjoyable build, and it was just the sort of nice, quick, not too difficult kit that I needed. My last two videos have been about much more complicated kits, though nothing wrong with that, but as the kids say, sometimes a nice simple kit is as good as a holiday, both in terms of the actual building, and for me, the video making process. I think the model has turned out really well, and this being a Tamiya kit, nobody is surprised. This is the first time I've built a model of a bulldozer, but I do rather like construction equipment. It's interesting, though it does seem to be a bit less common a subject for model kits. That said, in my stash, I do have another bulldozer, complete with a truck to haul it around, and an excavator, so if you happen to be interested in construction models, keep an eye out for those. I obviously don't know a whole lot about bulldozers, but I think this one looks interesting and kind of old and vintage. That's the best description I have. Deal with it. I think it's going to look great when it's painted, and then weathered to look all beaten up, like it's been dozing the bulls for years and years. I really like the metallic sticky emblem thing, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that turns out on the finished paint job. Of course, my to paint list is already way too long, so this won't be painted soon, but one day. Because I don't know much about bulldozers,
Or anything.
yeah, or anything, I can't really tell you how realistic this one is. I think it's probably a pretty good representation of the real thing though. Like I mentioned, the build was fun, easy, and pretty quick to put together. I got it done in about 2 hours. Of course, that is 2 hours while streaming, which is a bit different to real time. Mostly because of all the waffling, fiddling with cameras, and having sensible fun times with the folks in chat that it involves. That is to say, you could probably whip this together pretty darn quick if you felt a need to, but why rush? I would suggest going at a reasonable pace, which is of course determined by you, and enjoying your hobby time. That's what it's for. Anyway, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put those in the comment section below. If you've built one of these or any other cool models and you want to share, why not drop by our Discord community and share some pictures? We would love to see what you've done. If you want to watch me build kits like this live on stream, head on over to my Twitch channel, which is where I happen to stream. The link is in the description below. And if you've not already done so, why not subscribe, follow, ring the bell, become a patron if you want to see my videos a bit early, or maybe just come say hi on Discord or Twitch. Links to all of my things like social media are in the description below, and as always, I shall return soon. So until then, be excellent to each other, have a wonderful day, and thank you for watching. Farewell.